When florist Maribel Luna delivers a bouquet to a luxury penthouse, she doesn't expect the heartbroken chef on the other side of the door to invite her to dinner, or that one simple delivery will bloom into a love story neither of them saw coming. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun filtered through the windows of Luna's floral boutique, casting a warm glow on the freshly cut flowers. Maribel Luna, dressed in her simple jeans and a pale blue t-shirt, moved around the shop with practiced ease. At 25, she had the kind of beauty that never drew attention to itself. Warm brown eyes, dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and hands that knew how to make beauty without demanding credit for it. "Maribel, honey, can you handle these last deliveries?" her Aunt Rosa called from behind the counter, glasses perched on the end of her nose as she squinted at the order form. "We've got a dozen long-stemmed roses going to Westwood Towers. Some fancy address." Maribel nodded, already reaching for her delivery jacket. "No problem, Tia, I'll take care of it." "Such a good girl," Rosa smiled, patting her niece's cheek. "Always helping, never complaining. Your mama would be so proud of what you've become." At the mention of her mother, Maribel felt the familiar tug in her chest. 5 years since cancer had taken her, and still the shop carried her mother's touch in every corner. "I know," Maribel said softly. "I still hear her sometimes, you know, when I'm wrapping the roses. Gentle hands, Mari. Flowers feel everything." Rosa nodded, eyes glistening. Elena always did believe that. "Now go on before it gets too late. And be careful driving in this weather." Outside, rain had begun to fall over Los Angeles, turning the usual golden city into something softer, more melancholic. Maribel loaded the roses into her small delivery van, careful to secure the vase. They were beautiful, deep red with perfect velvety petals. Someone was getting a very expensive apology or declaration of love today. As she did with every delivery, Maribel took out a small card and wrote a personal note, even though the customer hadn't requested one. It was her small way of adding extra care to each arrangement. "May these blooms bring joy to your day," she wrote in her neat handwriting. Simple but sincere. The drive to Westwood Towers took longer than expected with the rain slowing traffic. By the time she pulled into the parking garage of the luxury high-rise, her delivery was running late. Balancing the vase carefully in her arms, she hurried to the elevator, checking the order form one more time. "Penthouse 3, she muttered to herself. "Must be nice." When the elevator doors opened on the top floor, Maribel took a deep breath. These fancy buildings always made her nervous. The plush carpets and elegant lighting made her feel out of place, like she might leave a smudge on the perfect surfaces just by existing. She found the door to Penthouse 3 and, shifting the roses to 1, arm knocked softly. When no one answered, she tried again, louder this time. The door suddenly swung open, and Maribel found herself face to face with a man who looked nothing like she'd expected. He was tall, with dark hair that looked like he'd been running his hands through it, and deep-set eyes that showed a flicker of surprise at seeing her. He wore a wrinkled t-shirt and jeans and no shoes. In one hand, he held a coffee mug that steamed in the cool air of the hallway. "Oh," Maribel started already, taking a step back. "I have a delivery of roses. They're not for me. I'm delivering them. To this address." She wasn't sure why she was stammering. There was something about the way he was looking at her, like he'd seen a ghost or had a revelation. "No," he said suddenly, his voice deep and certain. "Keep them." Maribel blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" The man smiled then, a crooked, genuine smile that transformed his face from handsome to something that made her heartbeat stutter. "Keep them," he repeated, leaning against the doorframe. "And have dinner with me instead." Maribel nearly dropped the vase. What? I can't. These are for someone. Someone paid for them." "I paid for them," he said, taking a sip from his mug. "I'm Julian Reyes. Those flowers were meant as an apology to someone who isn't in my life anymore, but now I'm thinking they were meant to bring you to my door instead." Maribel's mind was racing. Julian Reyes. The name sounded familiar, but she couldn't place it. He was obviously wealthy if he lived here, but there was something else about him. Something in the confident way he spoke that suggested he was used to people knowing who he was. That's not how flower deliveries work, Mr. Reyes, she said, trying to keep her voice professional, even as her cheeks warmed. I need to complete the delivery. Julian's eyes sparkled with amusement. The delivery is complete. I'm refusing the flowers and asking the delivery girl to dinner instead. It's unconventional, I know, but I'm a chef. We are known for improvising. A chef. That's why his name sounded familiar. Maribel had a vague memory of seeing his face in magazines or on television a few years back. You're serious? She asked, still holding the roses between them like a shield. Completely. He stepped back, gesturing to the interior of his penthouse. Come in, I'll cook for you. Something simple but delicious. No strings attached, just dinner. Maribel should have said no. She should have insisted he take the flowers or left them on his doorstep and walked away. That would have been the sensible thing to do. But there was something in Julian's eyes, a sincerity, a warmth that made her pause. I don't even know you, she said softly. That's the point of dinner, he replied. To get to know each other. I'm Julian, former chef, current restaurant consultant, and a man who's just realized he's been sending flowers to a ghost for too long. He hesitated, then added, I've had everything, and nothing ever felt this unexpected. Stay, and I'll cook. For you. Against all her better judgment, Maribel found herself nodding. One dinner, she agreed, stepping tentatively into his apartment. But I should call my aunt first. Let her know I'll be late. Julian's apartment was stunning, but not in the cold showroom way she had expected. The space was open and airy, with large windows that looked out over the rainy city. But what caught her attention was the kitchen, a chef's dream with copper pots hanging from a rack, a massive island in the center, and the most beautiful stove she had ever seen. Make your call, Julian said, taking the roses from her arms, and placing them on the kitchen island. And then you can tell me your name, flower girl. Maribel quickly called her aunt, making up a story about traffic and a few extra deliveries. When she hung up, she found Julian already moving around his kitchen, pulling ingredients from the refrigerator. Maribel, she said. Maribel Luna. Maribel, he repeated, as if tasting the name. It suits you, beautiful and unique. He gestured to a stool at the island. Sit, watch. I haven't cooked for anyone in a long time. As Julian began to prepare their meal, Maribel found herself relaxing. There was something hypnotic about watching his hands work, chopping vegetables with quick, precise movements, adjusting heat with a flick of his wrist, tasting and adjusting seasoning without measuring. So you deliver flowers, Julian said as he worked. Is that your passion? Maribel shook her head. It's my aunt's shop. I started helping after my mom died. She and my aunt owned it together. She ran her finger along the smooth marble of the island. I like it, though, bringing beauty to people, making their important moments a little brighter. Julian nodded, his eyes serious. I understand that. It's why I became a chef. Food is just another way of bringing joy, of creating moments. Why? Did you stop? Maribel asked, then immediately regretted it. I'm sorry, that's too personal. Julian gave a small laugh. No, it's a fair question. The short answer is that life got complicated. The public life wasn't for me anymore. He stirred something in a pan that smelled incredible. What about you? Do you ever want something more than the flower shop? Maribel thought about it. Sometimes, but then I think about my mum, how happy she was there, how she always said that arranging flowers was like arranging little pieces of joy. She smiled at the memory. She used to tell me that grief made her gentle instead of hard. That's what I try to be. Julian stopped what he was doing and looked at her with an intensity that made her catch her breath. That's beautiful. Maribel. They fell into a comfortable silence as Julian finished cooking. Soon he was setting 2 plates on the island, a simple but elegant pasta dish with fresh herbs and vegetables. Nothing fancy, he said, almost apologetically. But honest food. The first bite was heaven. Maribel couldn't help the small sound of pleasure that escaped her lips. This is amazing, she said once she could speak again. Julian smiled, pleased. My grandmother taught me to cook. She always said that love lived in the steam rising from kitchen pots. I didn't understand what she meant until I was older. As they ate, they talked about flowers and food, about the comfort of silence. About growing up in Los Angeles and the places they loved most in the city, Maribel was surprised at how easy it was to talk to Julian, how the hours slipped by unnoticed. After dinner, Julian opened a bottle of wine and they moved to his living room. The rain had stopped, and the city lights twinkled below them like earthbound stars. "So," Maribel said, taking a small sip of her wine, "why were you sending roses as an apology, if you don't mind me asking?" Julian was quiet for a moment. 2 years ago today, I was supposed to get married. She never showed up." He gave a small, self-deprecating smile. "Every year I send the same flowers. A reminder, I guess. Or maybe punishment." "I'm sorry," Maribel said softly. "That must have been awful." Julian shrugged. "It was, but today when you showed up at my door, it felt like enough. Like maybe it was time to stop apologizing to someone who isn't listening." Their eyes met across the space between them, and something unspoken passed between them. A recognition, perhaps. Two people who had known loss, who understood what it meant to carry it with them. It was late when Maribel finally stood to leave. Julian walked her to the elevator, both of them suddenly awkward, as if waking from a shared dream. "Thank you for dinner," Maribel said, fidgeting with the strap of her purse. "It was unexpected, but nice." "The best things usually are unexpected," Julian replied. His hands trembled slightly as he reached out, hesitated, then let his arm fall back to his side. "If I ordered flowers tomorrow, would you come again?" Maribel felt a flutter in her chest. This was crazy. She didn't know this man. She shouldn't be feeling this connection after one evening. And yet, "Only if the note says something real," she answered, surprising herself with her boldness. Julian's face lit up with a smile that made him look younger, freer. "I think I can manage that." As the elevator doors closed between them, Maribel leaned against the wall, clutching the roses he had insisted she take home. What had just happened, and why couldn't she stop smiling? Back in his penthouse, Julian stood looking out at the city lights, a sense of possibility washing over him for the first time in years. He pulled out his phone and placed an order for tomorrow, a simple bouquet of daisies. And in the note section he typed, "Thank you for reminding me that new beginnings can arrive unexpectedly, carrying roses." The next morning, Maribel arrived at Luna's floral boutique earlier than usual. The shop was quiet, still dark, with only the first hints of sunrise filtering through the windows. She moved through the familiar space, turning on lights and checking the flowers that had arrived yesterday, but her mind was elsewhere, replaying the previous evening like a movie she couldn't stop watching. "You're here early," Aunt Rosa's voice startled her. The older woman stood in the doorway, eyebrows raised. "Couldn't sleep," Maribel shrugged, trying to appear casual. "Just wanted to get a head start." Rosa studied her niece's face with knowing eyes. Nothing to do with that delivery that kept you out so late?" "It was just traffic, Tia," Maribel lied, focusing intently on arranging a bundle of carnations. "Traffic, right." Rosa didn't sound convinced. "And the roses? The ones you were supposed to deliver but came home carrying instead?" Maribel's cheeks flushed. "It's not what you think. So tell me what it is," Rosa said, crossing her arms but smiling gently. "Because what I think is that my quiet niece met someone interesting." Before Maribel could form a response, the shop phone rang. Rosa answered it, her eyes still fixed. "On Maribel. Luna's Floral Boutique, how can we brighten your day?" Her expression shifted from curious to surprised. "Why yes, she is here. One moment." She held out the phone to Maribel. "For you, a customer." Maribel's heart skipped as she took the phone. "This is Maribel. Good morning, flower girl." Julian's voice was warm, slightly rough with morning. "Did you sleep well?" Yes," she stammered, turning away from her aunt's watchful gaze. "How did you find the shop number?" "I'm resourceful," he chuckled. "Besides, I needed to check if my order went through." "Order? Daisies. Simple but honest flowers. They should be arriving soon." As if on cue, the delivery bell rang, and a young man entered carrying a box from their wholesaler. Maribel watched as Rosa signed for it and opened the package to reveal a fresh batch of daisies. "They're here." Maribel said, unable to keep the smile from her voice. Good. And the note? I haven't seen it yet. Ask them to check the order form. It's important. Rosa was already waving an order slip at her. Maribel took it and read the typed message. Thank you for reminding me that new beginnings can arrive unexpectedly. Carrying roses. Something warm bloomed in her chest. It says something real, she said softly into the phone. I promised it would. Julian paused. So, will you come? Tonight? After work? Maribel bit her lip, hesitating. This was crazy. She barely knew this man, and yet there was something about him, about the way they had connected so easily over dinner, about the way he looked at her, not through her like so many others did. Yes, she found herself saying, but I should be done by 6. Perfect. I'll cook again, something special this time. When she hung up, Rosa was watching her with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Maribel Luna, what is going on? Who was that man? Maribel sighed. There was no hiding anything from her aunt. His name is Julian Reyes. He's a chef, or was. Those roses yesterday were supposed to be for someone else, but she struggled to explain. He asked me to keep them and have dinner with him instead. Rosa's eyes widened. Julian Reyes? The Julian Reyes? The one who had that fancy restaurant? Downtown? The one who was all over the magazines a few years ago? Maribel nodded slowly. I think so. He didn't talk much about his past. Dios mío, Rosa muttered, sitting down on a nearby stool. Child, do you know who you had dinner with? That man was one of the most celebrated chefs in the city until his divorce scandal. His ex-wife took him for everything. The restaurant, half his money, it was all over the news. Maribel frowned. She remembered now, vague details of a public breakup, a famous chef fallen from grace. But the Julian she met didn't seem like a scandal-ridden celebrity. He seemed real, thoughtful, maybe a little sad. He seems different now, she said. Quieter. Rosa's expression softened. People change. Sometimes pain transforms them. She reached out, taking Maribel's hand. Just be careful, mi amor. Men like that, they live in a different world than we do. The day crawled by, each tick of the clock seeming to take twice as long as normal. Maribel handled her deliveries with her usual care, but found her mind constantly drifting back to Julian's penthouse, to his kitchen, to the way he had looked at her over candlelight. At 5:30, she nervously changed in the shop's small bathroom, trading her work clothes for a simple dress she kept for emergencies. It wasn't fancy, just a soft blue cotton that her mother had always said brought out her eyes, but it was the best she had. You look beautiful, Rosa said when she emerged. He's a lucky man whether he knows it yet or not. The drive to Westwood Towers felt both too long and too short. Maribel's stomach was a knot of nerves as the elevator climbed to the penthouse floor. What was she doing? Meeting a man she barely knew, a former celebrity who probably had dated models and actresses. It was like something from a dream or a bad romance novel. Julian opened the door before she could knock, as if he'd been waiting just on the other side. The smile that lit his face made all her doubts momentarily fade. You came, he said. Relief evident in his voice. I said I would. Many people say things they don't mean. He stepped back, inviting her in. I'm glad you're not one of them. Julian's penthouse smelled amazing. Herbs and spices and something rich and savory that made her mouth water. But what caught her attention were the daisies. Her daisies, arranged in a crystal vase on the dining table, which had been set with candles and fine china. You went to a lot of trouble, she said, suddenly shy. Julian shook his head. No trouble, just inspiration. He guided her to the kitchen island, where 2 glasses of wine waited. I haven't felt inspired to cook like this in a long time, as he put the finishing touches on their meal. Maribel found herself studying him. There was a grace to his movements, a confidence that came from years of mastery. But there was also a tension in his shoulders, as if he carried a weight she couldn't. See, tell me about your restaurant, she said. The one you used to have. Julian's hands stilled for a moment before resuming their work. Races, it means roots in Spanish. It was my dream, a place to showcase the food of my heritage, but with a modern twist. A shadow crossed his face. I lost it in the divorce, along with most everything else. I'm sorry, he shrugged, but she could see the pain beneath the casual gesture. It was a lifetime ago. Now I consult for other restaurants, help them develop menus. It's less demanding. He glanced up at her. What about you? Have you always worked with flowers? Since I was little. My mom and aunt opened the shop when I was born. I used to do my homework at the back counter, surrounded by roses and lilies. She smiled at the memory. After Mum got sick, I started working there more. It seemed natural to stay after she passed. Julian nodded, understanding in his eyes. Roots, he said softly. They matter. Dinner was even more incredible than the night before. Tender lamb with herbs, roasted vegetables, and a sauce that Maribel wanted to drink straight from the plate. As they ate, the conversation flowed easily between them, punctuated by laughter and moments of comfortable silence. So why me? Maribel finally asked the question that had been on her mind all day. Why ask the delivery girl to dinner? Julian considered her over the rim of his wineglass. Honestly, I don't know. When I opened that door and saw you standing there with those roses, something just clicked. He set down his glass. In my old life, everything was noise. Cameras, critics, social media, everyone wanting a piece of me. When I lost it all, I realized none of it was real. His eyes met hers. But you feel real, Maribel. The sincerity in his voice made her chest tight. No one had ever looked at her the way Julian did, like she was something precious, something worth seeing. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Julian put on some soft music, and they talked for hours about books they loved, places they'd been, dreams they still held. He told her about growing up in his grandmother's kitchen, learning to cook by feel rather than recipes. She shared stories of her mother, how even in her final days she would insist on arranging the flowers for favored customers. It's getting late, Maribel said reluctantly, noticing the clock. Julian nodded, equally hesitant. Can I see you again? I'd like that. Tomorrow? She laughed. You're going to run out of flowers to order. Then I'll have to find another excuse. His smile was warm but nervous, like a teenager asking for a first date. Maybe we could meet somewhere. A restaurant or a movie? Maribel shook her head. No, I like it here, just us. The thought of being seen in public with Julian, of facing the curious stares or judgmental looks, made her anxious. If that's okay. More than okay. Relief crossed his face. I'm not exactly eager to venture back into the public eye either. At the elevator, Julian reached out, his fingers brushing hers. Thank you for coming, Maribel, for giving this, whatever it is, a chance. Thank you for the daisies, she replied, gathering her courage, and for seeing me. The next few weeks fell into a pattern. 3 or 4 evenings a week, Maribel would visit Julian's penthouse after work. Sometimes he would cook elaborate meals. Other times, they would order takeout and eat sitting on his living room floor, talking until midnight. On her delivery rounds, she would often find orders from him. Small arrangements with notes that made her blush or smile or both. Hope tastes like lemon and thyme. Today, I missed the way you say goodbye. Your laugh is the best sound in my kitchen. They kept their relationship private. Maribel told only her aunt, who worried but kept her counsel. Julian told no one. It was their secret world, built in the quiet evenings away from judging eyes. One night, as they sat on Julian's balcony watching the city lights, he took her hand in his. I've been thinking, he said, his voice hesitant. About us. Maribel's heart stuttered. Oh? I know we've been keeping things quiet, and I understand. Why, my past, the publicity, it's a lot. His thumb traced circles on her palm. But I don't want to hide anymore, not with you. He looked at her, vulnerability raw in his eyes. I'm falling in love with you, Maribel Luna, and I want the world to know it. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Maribel felt tears spring to her eyes, happy ones, overwhelmed ones. Julian, before she could say more, his lips found hers in a gentle kiss. It was sweet and perfect and everything she had dreamed it might be, When they finally pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. "I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered. "But I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of your world, of not belonging in it." She closed her eyes. "I'm just a florist. I don't know how to be part of your life out there." Julian cupped her face in his hands. "My life is here now, with you. The rest doesn't matter." She wanted to believe him. More than anything, she wanted to believe that their private happiness could translate into the real world, where his past and his fame still lived. The next morning, Maribel arrived at the flower shop to find Rosa agitated, pacing behind the counter with a magazine in her hand. "Maribel," she said, her voice strained, "you need to see this." She handed over the glossy publication, the latest issue of LA Style, a gossip magazine that covered the city's elite. There, on page 6, was a photo of Maribel and Julian. They were standing on his balcony, his arm around her waist, her head tilted up toward him in laughter. The headline made her stomach drop. "Comeback chefs fling with florist. Is Julian Reyes finally moving on?" The article was short but devastating, describing her as an unknown flower delivery girl and speculating whether she was a rebound or just a passing fancy for the once famous chef who was rumored to be planning his return to the culinary spotlight. Maribel felt the blood drain from her face. How did they... Someone must have recognized him, taken photos from another building. Rosa's eyes were sympathetic but worried. "Mija, I warned you about his world." Maribel couldn't speak. The private bubble they had created had burst, their quiet romance exposed and twisted into something ugly, something that made her sound like a temporary distraction in Julian's life. The shop phone rang, making her jump. Rosa answered it, her expression hardening as she listened. "No comment," she said firmly before hanging up. "A reporter," she explained, "wanting to know about you and Julian." Maribel's phone vibrated in her pocket, a text from Julian. "Have you seen it?" "I'm so sorry, call me." But she couldn't. Not yet. Not until she figured out what this meant, what she wanted. The idea of cameras following them, of people judging their relationship, of being labeled a fling florist. It was overwhelming. "I need to be alone," she said, heading for the back room. "Can you handle the shop today?" Rosa nodded, concern etched on her face. "Of course, mi amor. Take all the time you need." Alone in the small office, surrounded by order forms and delivery receipts, Maribel let the tears come. She had known deep down that being with Julian wouldn't be simple. But she hadn't expected this, to have her private joy exposed and diminished, turned into fodder for gossip. Her phone kept buzzing with Julian's calls, but she silenced it. What could he say that would make this okay? How could their relationship survive in the harsh light of public scrutiny? As the afternoon wore on, her sadness hardened into resolve. She finally picked up her phone and typed a message to Julian. "I need some time. This isn't the life I want. I'm not someone to be passed around when your name makes noise again." She hit send before she could change her mind, then turned off her phone completely. The quiet of the office enveloped her as she realized she was back where she started, the invisible girl who arranged beauty for others but remained unseen herself. Except now she knew what it felt like to be seen. And the loss of that feeling hurt more than she could have imagined. For 3 days, Maribel moved through life like a ghost. She went to work, arranged flowers, made deliveries, all with mechanical precision but no joy. Rosa watched her with worried eyes but knew better than to push. When customers mentioned seeing Maribel's photo in the magazine, Rosa firmly changed the subject. Julian had called dozens of times, left voicemails that Maribel couldn't bring herself to listen to. Sent text messages she read but couldn't answer. Each day he ordered flowers for delivery to his penthouse, each with notes that grew increasingly desperate. "Please talk to me. I miss you. I never meant to hurt you." Maribel arranged each bouquet herself, but sent other workers to deliver. Them. She couldn't face him. Not yet. Maybe not ever. On the 4th day, a simple arrangement of white orchids arrived at the shop for her. The card read, "I'm sorry for the pain my life has caused you. You deserve better." The finality of it made her chest ache. Was this goodbye? Had he given up on her already? That night, alone in her small apartment, Maribel finally allowed herself to listen to Julian's voicemails. His voice, usually so confident, sounded broken. "Maribel, please, call me back. I need to explain. That article, those things they said about you, about us, it's all garbage. You know that, right? What we have is real. It's been 2 days. And I haven't heard from you. I understand you're upset. I am too, but we can figure this out together. Please, just talk to me. I miss you. The penthouse feels empty without you. I made pasta tonight and set a place for you at the table, just hoping. I know, pathetic, right? But that's what you've done to me, flower girl. Made me believe in something again. The last message was different. Resigned. Defeated. I get it now. You don't want this life. The publicity, the scrutiny. I don't blame you. It's the worst part of who I used to be." A heavy pause. "I respect your decision. I won't bother you anymore. Just know that these weeks with you have been the most real thing in my life for a very long time. Goodbye, Maribel." Tears streamed down her face as the message ended. She hadn't expected it to hurt this much, this feeling of something precious slipping through her fingers. Maybe she was being a coward. Maybe what they had was worth fighting for, worth enduring a little public scrutiny. She picked up her phone, then set it down again. What would she even say? How could they possibly navigate a world that would always see her as the simple florist and him as the celebrity chef? Two people from different universes who had no business being together. The next morning, Maribel arrived at the shop to find a crowd of reporters outside. They surged forward when they saw her, cameras flashing, questions being shouted. "Maribel, how does it feel to be dating a famous chef? Is it true you two met when you delivered flowers to his ex-fiancée? Are the rumors true that Julian Reyes is opening a new restaurant?" Rosa appeared at her side, wrapping a protective arm around her shoulders and guiding her through the throng and into the shop. Once inside, she locked the door and pulled the blinds. "It's been like this all morning," Rosa said, her face tight with anger. "Ever since that new article came out." "What new article?" Maribel asked, dread filling her stomach. Rosa hesitated, then handed her a tablet. On the screen was a gossip website with the headline, "Exclusive. The truth behind Julian Reyes's flower." Shop romance. The article was worse than Maribel could have imagined. It claimed to have an insider source, who revealed that Julian had been planning his comeback to the restaurant scene for months, and that his relationship with the humble florist was a calculated PR move to soften his image after his bitter divorce. Reyes has always been image-conscious, the anonymous source was quoted as saying. Dating a sweet, ordinary girl from a local flower shop is exactly the kind of story that makes the public forget about his messy past. It's all part of the rebranding. Maribel felt sick. This couldn't be true. The Julian she knew, the man who cooked for her and listened to her stories about her mother, who wrote those beautiful notes, he couldn't have been faking it all. Could he? "I don't believe it," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Rosa squeezed her hand. "Neither do I, Mija. But this is why I warned you. People like him. They live in a world of publicity and image. It's hard to know what's real." The shop phone rang incessantly all morning. After the fifth call from a reporter, Rosa unplugged it. Maribel's cell phone was no better. Unknown numbers calling one after another. She finally turned it off completely. Around noon, the bell over the shop door jangled. Rosa had left it unlocked after the reporters had dispersed. Maribel looked up from the roses she was arranging, expecting to see a customer. Instead, Julian stood there. He looked terrible, unshaven, hair disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. But seeing him still made her heart skip. She'd missed him more than she wanted to admit. "Maribel," he said, his voice rough. "Please. 5 minutes." Rosa appeared from the back room, eyes narrowing at the sight of Julian. "You have some nerve, showing up here after that article." "Tia, it's okay," Maribel said quickly. "Can you give us a moment?" Rosa looked between them, then nodded reluctantly. 5 minutes. I'll be in the back if you need me." When they were alone, Julian took a step toward Maribel but stopped when she tensed. "That article," he said, "all of it. It's lies. Complete garbage." "How do I know that?" Maribel asked, hating how small. Her voice sounded. You had a whole life before me that I know nothing about. A life with publicity and fame and image consultants. You think I orchestrated this, that I... What? Planned to meet you, arrange for you to deliver flowers just so I could start some fake romance for publicity? He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. Maribel, that's insane. I was broken before I met you, living like a hermit in that penthouse, sending flowers to a woman who never loved me enough to show up on our wedding day. The raw pain in his voice made her doubt waver. Then who's the source? Who would say those things? Julian's jaw tightened. I have my suspicions. My ex-wife has always had friends in the gossip industry, and she's never liked the idea of me being happy without her. He moved closer, stopping just on the other side of the counter from Maribel. But that doesn't matter. What matters is us, what we built together in those quiet evenings. It was all so perfect when it was just us, Maribel said, tears threatening. But this, she gestured toward the window where a lone photographer still lurked. This is your world, Julian, not mine. I don't know how to exist in it. Then we'll make our own world, he insisted. Away from all this, I've been offered a position at a small restaurant in Napa Valley. Nothing fancy, just honest cooking in wine country. I was going to tell you the night the first article broke. His eyes were pleading. Come with me. We can start fresh where no one cares about gossip magazines or comeback stories. Maribel's heart leapt at the thought. A new beginning away from the cameras and speculation. But then reality set in. My aunt, she said. The shop. I can't just leave. It's all I have of my mother. Julian's face fell. I understand. Family. Roots are important. He reached across the counter, his fingers gently brushing hers. But so is this what we have. At least it is to me. The touch of his hand sent a current through her. Despite everything, despite the doubts and the fear, she knew what they had was real. The question was whether it was enough to overcome the differences in their worlds, enough to withstand the public scrutiny. I need time to think, she said finally. This is all happening so fast. Julian nodded, reluctantly withdrawing his hand. I have to give them an answer by next week. He turned to go, then stopped. For what it's worth, meeting you was the best thing that's happened to me in years. Whatever else you believe that. After he left, Maribel sank onto a stool, emotions swirling inside her. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that. What they had wasn't just some publicity stunt or rebound relationship, but the voice of doubt, amplified by that horrible article, was hard to silence. Rosa emerged from the back, her expression softer than before. He looked sincere, she offered. And very much in love. You were listening? Of course I was listening. You're my niece and he broke your heart once already, Maribel sighed. I don't know what to do, Tia. I love him, I think. But his life is so complicated. Rosa sat beside her. Life is always complicated, mi amor. The question is whether he's worth the complications. She took Maribel's hands in hers. Your mother used to say that true love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who sees the perfect in you. And what do you think? I think, Rosa said slowly, that when that man looks at you, he sees something precious. Not just a pretty face or a convenient story for the gossip rags, she squeezed Maribel's hands, but only you can decide if that's enough. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Maribel went through the motions of work, but her mind was elsewhere, turning over Julian's offer, weighing the risks against the potential happiness. By closing time, she was no closer to a decision. At home that night, she found herself looking through the photos on her phone, snapshots she'd taken during those quiet evenings at Julian's penthouse, him laughing in the kitchen, the view from his balcony at sunset, his hands carefully plating a meal. Small, perfect moments that had felt so real. On impulse, she turned her phone back on. It immediately lit up with notifications, missed calls, texts, voicemails. Most from unknown numbers, but one text from Julian, sent just an hour ago. I'm not giving up on us. Whatever you decide about Napa, I want you to know that. It was followed by a photo, a single red rose in a simple glass vase, sitting on what she recognized as his kitchen counter. The sight of it, so simple yet so meaningful, brought fresh tears to her eyes. She was about to call him when another text came through, this one from an unknown number. Is it true you're moving to Napa with Julian Reyes? Please call me for comment. Tara Lewis, LA celebrity. Maribel stared at the message in shock. How did they know about Napa already? Had Julian told someone? Was this all just another publicity stunt after all? She called Julian, anger and confusion making her hands shake. He answered on the first ring. Maribel, I'm so glad you... Did you tell the press about Napa? She interrupted, her voice tight. What? No, of course not. Why would I do that? Then, how do they know? I just got a text from some reporter asking for comment about us moving there together. There was a long pause. When Julian spoke again, his voice was heavy with realization. It has to be Michael. He owns the restaurant in Napa. He must have told someone. And how many other someones are there in your life, Julian? How many more leaks and articles and photographers am I going to have to deal with? Maribel, please, this isn't my fault. I can't control what other people do. That's just it. You can't. And neither can I. She took a deep breath. I don't think I can do this, any of it. It's too much. Don't say that, he pleaded. We can figure this out. How? By running away to Napa? There will just be new reporters there, new stories. Your life will always be like this, Julian. And I don't know if I'm strong enough to live it with you. The silence that followed was heavy with hurt. Finally, Julian spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. I love you, Maribel. I think I have since that first night when you stood in my doorway holding those roses. But I won't force you into a life that makes you unhappy. I'm sorry, she said, meaning it with every fiber of her being. I care about you too, more than I ever expected to, but I just can't see how this works. After they hung up, Maribel curled up on her bed and cried until she had no tears left. She'd done the right thing, the sensible thing. So why did it feel like she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life? Days passed, blending into one another. Maribel threw herself into work, taking on extra deliveries, staying late to clean the shop, anything to keep her mind occupied. The reporters eventually lost interest and moved on to fresher scandals. The phone calls stopped. Life began to return to normal, except nothing felt normal anymore. The world had lost its color, its taste. Food was bland, music was just noise. Even the flowers seemed less vibrant than before. A week after their phone call, Maribel was closing up shop when Rosa approached her with an envelope. This came for you earlier, she said. I thought you might want to read it in private. Maribel recognized Julian's handwriting immediately. Her hands trembled as she opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. Dear Maribel, I'm writing this old-fashioned way because I know how much you appreciate thoughtful gestures. Also because I'm afraid if I call, you won't answer, and I need you to hear this. I've turned down the job in Napa, not because of you, but because running away has never solved my problems before, and it won't now. Instead, I'm staying in LA and opening a small, intimate restaurant in Silver Lake. Nothing fancy, just good food made with heart. I've already signed the lease. The restaurant will be called Flores, Spanish for flowers. Because even though you may not be in my life anymore, you've changed me in ways I'm still discovering. You taught me that beauty doesn't need to shout to be noticed, that the most profound connections happen in quiet moments, that sometimes the most unexpected deliveries turn out to be exactly what we need. I won't ask you to reconsider. I respect your decision and your right to a life without cameras and gossip. But know this, what we had was real, the most real thing in my life. And if someday you find yourself missing our evenings together, missing the man who fell in love with the girl who brought the roses, well, you'll know where to find me. All my love, Julian. Maribel read the letter 3 times, her vision blurring with tears. There was no manipulation here, no ulterior motive, just raw honesty from a man who had opened his heart to her and was now letting her go. What does it say? Rosa asked gently. He's opening a new restaurant here in LA. Maribel wiped her eyes. He named it Flores. Rosa's eyebrows rose. After you? After what I taught him, he says. Maribel folded the letter carefully. About beauty and quiet moments. And what will you do now? It was the question Maribel had been avoiding for days. What did she want? The safe, predictable life she'd always known? Or the messy, complicated but potentially beautiful life with Julian? I don't know, she admitted. I'm scared, Tia. Scared of being hurt, of being used, of not being enough for someone like him. Rosa took the letter from Maribel's hands and set it on the counter. Let me tell you something about your mother. When she fell in love with your father, everyone said it wouldn't last. He was a musician, always traveling, living a life so different from hers. But she took the risk because she saw the man behind the guitar, the one no one else knew. She smiled sadly. They had 8 beautiful years before the accident took him, and yes, she had heartbreak, but she also had love. Real love, she never regretted it. But what if the gossip is true? What if I'm just part of his comeback story? Then you'll have a broken heart, Rosa said simply. But you'll also know you were brave enough to try. She cupped Maribel's face in her hands. The flowers don't worry about the rain, mi amor. They just bloom anyway. That night, Maribel couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Julian's letter, about Rosa's words, about her mother who had loved boldly despite the risks. Had she been letting fear make her decisions? Fear of not belonging in Julian's world, fear of being hurt, fear of the unknown. She thought about those quiet evenings in his penthouse, how they had created their own little world there, how his eyes lit up when she laughed, how he listened, really listened when she talked about her mother, how he had seen her, truly seen her, when so many others looked right through her. By morning, Maribel knew what she had to do. She dressed carefully in her favorite dress, the blue one her mother had loved, and drove to Luna's floral boutique. It was Valentine's Day, their busiest day of the year, but Rosa took one look at her face and nodded. You go, she said. I've already called in extra help. Maribel worked quickly, selecting the perfect flowers, not red roses this time, but soft pinks and golds, flowers that whispered instead of shouted. She arranged them with care, adding sprigs of greenery and a single white orchid in the center. Then she wrote a card, her hand steady despite the nervous fluttering in her chest. When she finished, she looked at Rosa. Will you be okay if I take a little time off? A week, maybe 2? Rosa smiled knowingly. Of course, the shop will be here when you get back, if you get back. I'll be back, Maribel promised, but maybe with some new ideas, some new dreams. The drive to Westwood Towers felt both familiar and strange, like returning to a place you've only visited in dreams. The doorman recognized her immediately and waved her up without announcing her. He'll be happy to see you, Miss Luna, he said, with a wink. In the elevator, Maribel's courage nearly failed her. What if Julian had moved on? What if his letter had been a final goodbye, not an invitation? What if she was too late? When the doors opened on the penthouse floor, she took a deep breath and stepped out. The hallway stretched before her, leading to the door she had knocked on that rainy day that now seemed a lifetime ago. To her surprise, the door was already open. Maribel stood frozen in the hallway, bouquet clutched to her chest. The open door seemed both an invitation and a warning. Taking a deep breath, she moved forward slowly, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure it could be heard throughout the building. Julian, she called softly as she stepped inside the penthouse. The space looked different somehow. Warmer, more lived in than she remembered. There were books on the coffee table, a jacket thrown over a chair, music playing softly from hidden speakers, and flowers, vases of them on every surface, as if he'd been ordering from every florist in the city. She moved deeper into the apartment, drawn toward the kitchen by the familiar scent of herbs and spices. There, standing by the stove, was Julian. His back was to her as he stirred something in a pot, humming softly to himself. On the kitchen island was a single red rose in a glass vase, just like the photo he'd sent her. For a moment she just watched him, this man who had walked into her life as unexpectedly as she had walked into his. Then, before she could speak, he turned. The look on his face was everything: surprise, joy, disbelief, hope, all washing over his features in an instant. He froze, wooden spoon still in hand, as if afraid she might disappear if he moved. Maribel, he breathed, like a prayer. You're here. She took a step forward, then another. Your door was open. I've been leaving it open, he admitted. Every day since I sent that letter, just hoping. He set down the spoon and moved toward her, stopping when only a few feet separated them. "Are those for me?" he asked, gesturing. To the bouquet she still clutched like a shield, Maribel looked down at the flowers she'd arranged so carefully. "Yes," she said, extending them toward him. "This time, the flowers really are for you." Julian took the bouquet with trembling hands, his eyes never leaving her face. "They're beautiful," he said. Then he looked at the card tucked among the blooms. "May I?" She nodded, suddenly nervous. What if her words weren't enough? What if she was too late? Julian opened the small envelope and read the card inside. His eyes filled with tears as he looked back at her. "You mean this?" he asked, voice rough with emotion. "Every word," she replied. In one swift movement, he closed the distance between them, gathering her into his arms. The bouquet was crushed between them, petals falling to the floor like confetti, but neither of them cared. His lips found hers in a kiss that felt like coming home, like every good thing she'd ever known. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Julian rested his forehead against hers. "I was so afraid I'd lost you," he whispered, "that I'd never get to hold you like this again. I was afraid too," she admitted. "Not of losing you, but of losing myself in your world, of not being enough." Julian pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "You are more than enough, Maribel Luna. You always have been." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. "I love you, all of you. The quiet girl who leaves notes with her deliveries. The woman who listens with her whole heart. The person who saw me, really saw me, when I'd forgotten who I was." Tears slid down Maribel's cheeks, but they were happy tears. "I love you too," she said. "Enough to try, enough to be brave." Julian's smile was radiant. "That's all I can ask for." He took her hand and led her toward the kitchen island where a flower vase already waited. "I bought this yesterday," he confessed, "just in case." Maribel laughed through her tears as she helped him place what remained of her crushed bouquet into the vase. "I think they've seen better days." "They're perfect," Julian insisted, arranging the flowers with surprising care. "Because they're from you." That night, they talked for hours, about fears and hopes, about the restaurant Julian was planning to open, about what it might be like to face the world together on their own terms. "It won't be easy," Julian warned. "There will always be people interested in my past, in who I'm with. Cameras where we don't want them." "I know," Maribel said, "but I think I can handle it if we're together." "We will be," he promised, "always." Later, as they sat on his balcony watching the stars appear over the city, Julian brought up something that had been on his mind. "Your note," he said. "You mentioned a condition." Maribel smiled. "Only if you keep delivering the dinner," she quoted herself. Julian grinned. "Deal, but I still want the handwritten notes." "I think I can manage that." A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by the distant sounds of the city below. Then Julian spoke again, his voice thoughtful. "I've been thinking about your aunt, the flower shop. I know how important they are to you." Maribel nodded. "They're my roots, which is why I wanted to ask." Julian shifted to face her. "What would you think about combining our worlds, not just personally, but professionally?" "What do you mean?" "Flora's," he explained. "My new restaurant. What if it wasn't just a restaurant, but a place that celebrated both our passions? The front could be an extension of Luna's floral boutique, a high-end flower shop selling your arrangements, and the back would be my kitchen, serving food inspired by those same flowers." Maribel's eyes widened as she considered the idea. A flower shop and restaurant in one? Exactly. Customers could come for the flowers and stay for the food, or come for the food and leave with flowers. His eyes were alight with excitement. "We could even use edible flowers in the dishes, grown in our own greenhouse, and you could create special arrangements for the tables each day." The vision he painted was captivating, a place where both their talents could shine, where their separate worlds could merge into something new and beautiful. "What about Tia Rosa, the original shop?" "It would stay exactly as it is," Julian assured her. "This would be an expansion, not a replacement. Rosa could run the original location, and you could divide your time between both, at least until we find our footing." He took her hands in his. "What do you think? Too much, too soon?" Maribel thought about it, really thought about it. Was she ready for such a big step? To not just be with Julian personally, but to tie their professional lives together as, "Well, it's a beautiful dream," she said finally. "But let's take it one step at a time, get the restaurant established first. Let me get used to being visible. Then we can talk about expansion." Julian nodded, relief evident on his face. "You're right, as always." He kissed her gently. "Thank you for being the sensible one." "Someone has to be," she teased. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. Julian threw himself into preparations for opening Flores, converting a charming old building in Silver Lake into the restaurant of his dreams. Maribel continued working at Luna's floral boutique, but she spent her evenings with Julian, helping with decisions about decor, sampling menu items, and slowly growing more comfortable with the idea of being part of his public life. There were challenges, of course. The first time they were photographed together at a farmer's market, Maribel panicked, certain another cruel article would follow. But Julian held her hand tightly, reminding her to breathe, to focus on him and not the cameras. And he was right. The article that appeared the next day was markedly different from the previous ones. "Chef Julian Reyes finds love and new beginnings," read the headline. The tone was respectful, even admiring, noting how happy and relaxed Julian appeared compared to his previous public persona. "See," Julian said, showing her the article over morning coffee in his penthouse. "Not all publicity is bad." Maribel had to admit he was right. And as the weeks passed, she found herself growing more comfortable with occasional photographers, with being recognized as Julian Reyes's girlfriend. It helped that Julian was fiercely protective of their privacy, refusing most interview requests and never discussing their relationship with the press. One evening, about a week before Flores was scheduled to open, Julian surprised Maribel with a small wrapped package at dinner. "What's this?" she asked, turning the box over in her hands. "Open it and see," he replied, a nervous edge to his smile. Inside was a key attached to a silver keychain shaped like a rose. "A key to the restaurant," she guessed. Julian shook his head. "To our home, if you want it to be." Maribel looked up in surprise. "You're asking me to move in with you. I'm asking you to build a life with me," he corrected gently, "starting with sharing a home." He took her hands in his. "I know it's fast. I know your apartment is close to the shop, and this place is, well, it's very much me still, but we could find a new place together, somewhere that's ours, or renovate this one. Whatever makes you happy." Maribel looked around the penthouse, at the kitchen where they'd shared so many meals, the living room where they'd talked for hours, the balcony where they'd watched countless sunsets. It already felt like home in so many ways. "I don't need a new place," she said. "This one has all our best memories." She clutched the key tightly. "Yes, I'll move in with you." The opening night of Flores was a triumph. The small, intimate space was packed with food critics, local celebrities, and ordinary people who had heard the buzz about Julian Reyes's new venture. The menu was a celebration of simple, honest food elevated to art, much like Julian himself had described Maribel's flower arrangements, and the flowers were everywhere. Maribel had spent days creating special arrangements for each table, for the bar for the entrance. Julian had insisted on crediting her work on the menu, floral designs by Maribel Luna of Luna's Floral Boutique. As the night wound down and the last customers departed, Julian found Maribel sitting alone at a corner table, looking tired but happy. "You did it," she said as he sat down beside her. "It's everything you dreamed it would be." Julian shook his head. "We did it. None of this would have happened without you." He took her hand, running his thumb over her knuckles. "You know that, right? That you're the reason I found myself again." Maribel smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. "We found each other," she corrected, "and look what we've created together." Speaking of creating things together, Julian reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I had a whole plan for this. A romantic dinner, music, the perfect speech. But sitting here, seeing what we've built, knowing what we've overcome to get here, he opened the box to reveal a delicate ring with a single diamond surrounded by tiny pink stones. I can't wait another moment. Maribel's breath caught in her throat. Julian, Maribel Luna, he said, his voice steady despite the nerves evident in his eyes. You walked into my life carrying roses meant for someone else, and somehow became the person I can't imagine living without. Will you marry me? Tears filled Maribel's eyes as she nodded. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Julian slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands trembling slightly. It was my grandmother's, he explained. The pink stones are rose quartz. Seemed fitting. It's perfect, Maribel said, admiring how the stones caught the light. Everything is perfect. Julian pulled her into his arms, kissing her with all the love and promise of their future together. When they finally broke apart, both breathless and beaming, he rested his forehead against hers. I have one more surprise for you, he said. Wait here. He disappeared into the kitchen, returning moments later with a covered silver tray. With a flourish, he set it on the table and lifted the cover. Maribel gasped. There, arranged on fine china, was a perfect miniature version of the first meal he had ever cooked for her, the night she'd delivered those roses. You remembered, she said, touched by the gesture. I remember everything about that night, Julian replied. The way you looked standing in my doorway, the sound of your laugh when I told you to keep the roses, the way the candlelight made your eyes shine. He sat across from her, pouring 2 glasses of champagne from a bottle that had been chilling nearby. It was the beginning of everything good in my life, as they shared this special meal in the quiet of their new restaurant. Maribel thought about how far they had come. From a chance delivery to a love that had transformed both their lives. There would be challenges ahead, she knew. More articles, more photographers, the everyday complications of merging 2 different worlds. But sitting across from Julian, seeing the love in his eyes, the beautiful space they had created together, she knew they could handle whatever came next, because they had built something real, something that had begun with a simple bouquet of roses, but had bloomed into something far more beautiful and lasting. 3 months later, Maribel stood in the back room of Luna's floral boutique, making last-minute adjustments to her bridal bouquet. She had designed it herself, soft pinks and golds, with a single red rose in the center, as a reminder of where it all began. Rosa appeared in the doorway, eyes misty, as she took in her niece in her simple but elegant wedding dress. Your mother would be so proud, she said, of the woman you've become, of the love you've found. Maribel smiled, blinking back tears. I wish she could be here. She is, mi amor, Rosa said, adjusting the small locket around Maribel's neck that contained a photo of her mother. She's right here. The wedding was small and intimate, held in the courtyard garden behind Flores. Julian had closed the restaurant for the day, transforming the space with twinkling lights and, of course, hundreds of flowers arranged by Maribel and Rosa. As Maribel walked down the aisle toward Julian, who looked at her with such adoration, it took her breath away. She thought about that rainy day nearly a year ago, how she had stood on his doorstep holding roses meant for someone else. How fate or chance or whatever you wanted to call it had brought them together in the most unexpected way. Julian took her hands as she reached him, his smile brilliant with joy. You look beautiful, he whispered. So do you, she replied, taking in his perfectly tailored suit and the single rose boutonniere she had pinned to his lapel that morning. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promises to love and support each other, to blend their worlds while respecting their differences, to face whatever came next, together. When they were pronounced husband and wife, Julian cupped Maribel's face in his hands and kissed her tenderly, as if she were the most precious thing in the world. And to him she was. The reception that followed was a celebration of everything they loved: Julian's food, Maribel's flowers, music that made them dance until their feet hurt, and the company of the few people they held most dear. Late in the evening, as the party continued around them, Julian led Maribel to a quiet corner of the garden. Happy? He asked, wrapping his arms around her waist. "More than I ever thought possible," she replied honestly. Julian smiled, the same smile that had captivated her that first night. "Good, because I have news." "What kind of news?" "I got a call yesterday from the Food Network." He watched her reaction carefully. "They want to do a feature on Flores and on us, our story." Maribel tensed slightly. "Television? Julian, I don't—" "No, sir, Mom, it's just one segment," he assured her, "and we'd have full control over what they film, what we share." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "But if you're not comfortable, I'll say no. Your happiness matters more than any publicity." Maribel thought about it. 6 months ago, the idea of being on television would have terrified her. But now, after navigating the attention that came with being Julian's partner, after finding her own strength in the midst of it all, "Will you be with me?" she asked. "The whole time?" "Always," he promised. "You'll never have to face any of it alone." She nodded slowly. "Then yes, let's do it. Let's share our story." Julian's face lit up. "Really, you're sure?" "I'm sure," she said firmly. "Besides, it might be good for business. Both businesses." She smiled playfully. "I've been thinking about your idea about expanding Luna's into Flores." "Have you now?" Julian's eyes sparkled with interest. "And what conclusion did you come to?" "That you were right. They belong together. Just like us." She kissed him softly. "We can talk to Rosa tomorrow. Start making plans." Julian pulled her closer. "Have I told you today how much I love you, Mrs. Reyes?" "You have," Maribel laughed, "but I don't mind hearing it again." "I love you," he said, punctuating each word with a kiss. "More than I ever thought possible." Around them, the garden twinkled with lights. Inside the restaurant, their friends and family laughed and danced, and between them was the promise of a future neither could have imagined that rainy day, when a delivery girl brought roses to a penthouse door. As Julian led her back to the party, back to the celebration of their union, Maribel caught sight of her bridal bouquet set carefully on a table nearby. The red rose at its center seemed to glow in the soft light, a reminder of where they began. Sometimes, she thought, the most beautiful stories start in the most unexpected ways. With a wrong delivery, with a chance meeting, with roses meant for someone else, but destined to bring together two people who needed each other more than they knew. And sometimes, those stories don't end with the wedding or the happily ever after. Sometimes, they're just beginning. 2 years later, Maribel stood in the newly expanded space that connected Flores to the second location of Luna's floral boutique. The glass-enclosed walkway between the two businesses was her favorite spot, filled with light and plants and the mingled scents of flowers and Julian's cooking. Their feature on the Food Network had been a surprise hit, leading to more business, for both the restaurant and the flower shop. What had begun as Julian's small, intimate restaurant had grown into something bigger, a destination for people who appreciated beauty in all its forms. Maribel still arranged flowers most days, though now she had staff to help with deliveries. Rosa still ran the original location of Luna's, though she talked more and more about retirement. And Julian still cooked every night at Flores, his passion for food as strong as ever. But their greatest creation wasn't the business. It was the life they had built together, a life that now included a 3-month-old daughter named Elena, after Maribel's mother. She slept now in a bassinet in Maribel's office, surrounded by flowers and love. Julian appeared in the doorway connecting the restaurant to the flower shop, wiping his hands on a towel. "There you are," he said, coming to stand beside her. "Admiring your handiwork?" Maribel leaned into him as he wrapped an arm around her waist. "Just thinking about how far we've come." Julian agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple. "From a girl with roses to my wife, business partner, and the mother of my child. Quite a journey. And to think I almost ran away that first night. But you didn't," Julian reminded her. "You stayed. You had dinner with me. You changed everything." Maribel turned in his arms, looking up at the man who had gone from stranger to the center of her world. "We changed each other," she corrected, "and we're still changing." Julian smiled, the same smile that had captivated her that first night, and every day since. I wouldn't have it any other way. As they stood together in the space they had created, surrounded by the beauty of flowers and the warmth of a kitchen where love was the main ingredient, Maribel thought again of those roses she had delivered on a rainy day. How she had assumed they were for someone else. How wrong she had been. They had always been for her. She just hadn't known it yet. The end.